Welcome to the Center on Innovation and Improvement's Indicators in Action. My name is Rachel, and I am your facilitator for this instructional delivery module, the last of the 3 modules focused on learning and instruction. Instructional delivery covers 28 indicators organized into 3 parts. Part 1, Teacher-Directed Instruction. Part 2, Student-Directed Instruction. And Part 3, Parent Communication and Homework. For maximum learning benefits and to avoid confusion, each part should be viewed in the order it appears on our website: Teacher-Directed Instruction, Student-Directed Instruction, and Parent Communication and Homework. We recognize that you may not be able to view all the parts in one sitting, so we've created each part as an individual file accessible on our website. This will provide an easy, convenient way for you to move through the module. An electronic workbook accompanies this module. The workbook provides you with the full list of the indicators and relevant tools, templates, and activities. You will also find additional content to supplement your learning. If you haven't already, please return to our website and take a minute to print the instructional delivery workbook now. Once you've done that, you're ready to move on to Part 1, Teacher-Directed Instruction. See you there. Welcome to Part 1 of Instructional Delivery, Teacher-Directed Instruction. Before we dive into the new material, let's review just a bit. First, we'll once again situate ourselves in a classroom by taking a look at a sample classroom layout and reviewing the instructional modes that it accommodates. You will remember how well this layout accommodates both whole class instruction and work time instruction. Whole class instruction is teacher-directed. This is when the teacher delivers material to the entire class at the same time. Teacher-directed instruction can also occur in small groups as long as the teacher is directing the instruction. Work time occurs when students are engaged in individual or small group activities, as assigned in their student learning plans. Except for the teacher-directed small group, work time activity is student-directed with teacher supervision and assistance. Work time includes group, independent, and computer-based learning. In work time, students practice and advance their learning with activities that are aligned to the objectives and differentiated according to their needs. In reviewing the classroom layout, you will notice designated space for whole class or teacher-directed instruction that serves as a space for independent work as well. Various work time centers that are clearly marked, and designated spaces for group work and their proximity to teacher centers. Now that we're fresh on the physical space, let's quickly review the instructional planning you and your instructional teams did to prepare for instructional delivery. You created a weekly class schedule that carves out time for whole class instruction and work time. Then you prepared a whole class outline for each subject, which serves as your basic preparation for whole class or teacher-directed instruction. And finally, you created a student learning plan for each student, which assigns differentiated learning activities for each student aligned with the appropriate leveled objectives. These plans are developed using pre-test performance data and subsequent student work and can be modified during the week. Before we move away from the planning, there is one last dot we want to connect. Assessing where students are in relation to the target objective is one of the first things a teacher does at the start of a unit of instruction. These data help to inform many things, including where reteaching or new instructional strategies are needed. So it is fitting that we start Part 1, Teacher-Directed Instruction, with a reminder to collect these data up front and throughout a unit of instruction, our first indicator. Unit pretests and post-tests are administered to all students in the grade level and subject covered by the unit of instruction. As we learned in instructional planning, pre-test data gives you a quick read on where students are in relation to the target objectives and a sense of the type and differentiation in instruction that they'll need. Post-test data either confirms mastery or it lets you know who needs reteaching and how much. All right, let's move into some action. Listen as this teacher talks about how she and her instructional team use pre-test data to individualize instruction.
Basically, our pre-assessments involve a small chunk of what we do for our master assessment at the end of a unit. And we'll give those pre-assessments, probably like six to 10 questions, and we put them together and develop a spreadsheet based on how each class did percentage-wise for each question, each standard. And we look at them across the grade level then. They're broken down by teacher, so we have that for our own class-based kind of process. But we look at them as a grade level to see any commonalities. It has been helpful in my class as well because I can see that it's very clear when my kids get 100%, they have something completely mastered. So that is very effective in my teaching practices because something that I would have maybe last year spent 2 days on teaching that content, now I'll spend just a small group session with them, like 15 minutes to just refresh and revise because they have that content already. So it kind of has been effective both in our recognizing grade level wise where we are and recognizing classroom based what we need to do in terms of teaching content.
Did you notice that her school uses student data analysis to improve instruction across grade levels and at the individual student level? What a positive impact that has on teaching and learning. Now, let's listen as a high school teacher shares the results of a post-test with her students, which sets her up perfectly for reviewing and reteaching.
A lot of the stuff on the top of this page references material from last unit. Specifically, the bonds, how we make the bonds, how we make negative and positive ions. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. A lot of you had a lot of trouble with this on your last test. Go ahead, shake your head. You know that to be true, yes? Well, how do we make positive ions? How do we make negative ions? What happens to the energy when we make these, bonds and all this, okay? So we really need to make sure we understand the fundamentals before we put it all together in this unit, right? So we're going to review the top half. We're going to review how we make these ions. You saw it on the last test. Guess what? You're going to see it the next test, absolutely. You know there are always review questions on our test. Okay? This unit, there are 12 review questions of the 50. Okay? 12 of the questions are going to be from previous material, things we had trouble with. And making these bonds is one of them. Now, the very first question up here says, how does potential energy change when a chemical bond is formed?
That teacher is part of a subject area instructional team that use their post-test data results to pinpoint areas of strengths and weaknesses in student learning. As you saw in the video, each teacher reviewed and retaught according to what the data revealed. Then they moved on. Regardless of how instructional teams are configured, grade level or subject area, you see how analyzing and using data impacts teaching and learning. Now we're ready to move on to how a teacher introduces a lesson in teacher-directed instruction.
Remember the whole class instruction weekly outline that serves as your basic preparation? We've used it here to show you how the next several indicators fit into this outline. You'll find it in your workbook too.
Once you've set the climate for attentive learning, cueing the students to focus in, reinforcing attentive behaviors, reminding students to have their materials ready, checking postures and facial expressions, and generally encouraging positive behavior, you review the previous lesson and check any related homework assignments, as our indicator states. All teachers review the previous lesson. As you review, you are taking note of the student's progress in mastering new learning. And, as we've already seen and heard, you are checking for areas that need reteaching among all or some students. Review also helps students connect what they've already learned with what they're about to learn. Let's take a look at a teacher in action who values the importance of reviewing the previous lesson.
By bringing up what we did last class, I think it enforces that every day is important.
Okay, so we talked about matrices last class.
And what I love about math is that every day builds. Starting day one, you need to know what we did on day one in order to be able to do what we're going to do on day 50. So being able to relay that to them I think makes it realize, oh, okay, the stuff that we did last class was important, and I know how to do that, so now it makes sense as to how we're using it today.
Do you see how important it is for students to make connections between what was learned and what will be learned? Here, another teacher highlights the importance of review.
Well, I think that research shows, plus what we have seen with our own students, that reintroducing or linking students to something they've already learned quickly, not to go in depth, but linking them to what they've already learned helps them understand why they're learning what they're learning, helps them take on the new learning, because students need something to connect their learning to. So I think it's always important just to briefly say, we've talked about this, now we're talking about that.
Once the review is complete, you're ready to prepare your students for the new material. All teachers clearly state the lesson's topic, theme, and objectives. There are many advantages to this practice, among them getting your students ready for learning. Let's hear what this teacher has to say about communicating objectives with her students.
I think it's important to state the objective and the goal of the class each day because it gives the students the language of your subject. A lot of times I'll have students say to me, oh, that's what we're doing today, or oh, that's what that's called. And a lot of times they'll know the method or the procedure to solve a problem, but they won't know that that's called solving for the molarity. So if you're going over that objective and stating it clearly to them, it gives them the language to use back to you when they're trying to articulate what they do or don't understand.